Well, hello, my pretties. How are you guys doing today? The case that I'm going to be talking about today is the tragic case of Megan Carr and Cherish DeSantis from Thomasville. That's right, Thomasville, Georgia. So it's right down the road from where I am in Cairo. And just to give you a little bit of a backstory about these two girls, they were both best friends. They were only born one day apart. So not only were they best friends, but it was almost like they were just destined to be close. You know, they were lifelong besties. They were both 16 years old at the time of this tragic case when it all went down. Megan was born August 30th of 1975, and, she was said to be very strong-willed, very determined. Whatever she chose to do, she was going to follow through with it, and she was going to do it. She was just very strong-willed. She was a member of the Thomasville High School band, and she was also involved in the music and drama with the troupe over there in Thomasville. So I kind of connected personally a little bit to her just because my niece was involved in troupe for a really long time. So, it's not an easy thing. Like, you have to have a lot of discipline and a lot of determination to be a part of something like that. It's a lot of hard work, especially whenever you think about the ages of these kids that are doing this. I mean, she was 16 at the time. And then her best friend, which is also sadly a part of this tragic case, Cherish DeSantis was her name. And Cherish was born on the 29th of August in 1975. And she was a cheerleader. She was very, very popular. She was very funny. It was said that she had just a fantastic sense of humor and just all around a really sweet girl. Just fun to be around, always cracking jokes, just a great person. And these two girls, they were just always together. Anytime they were away from school or away from activities, you could find them together. They were just very, very close. On March 27th of 92, both of the 16-year-old girls decided to load up in Megan's car, and they decided they were going to have a beach day. They were on spring break. It was actually the Friday before spring break, but they were out of school for like a teacher work day. And so they decided that they were going to go take off to Alligator Point to get some sun in. We've all been in those shoes, and they were just doing the typical spring break thing. It was just them, and they loaded up around lunch or so and went down to Alligator Point. Now, Alligator Point's not a very far ride. You guys are probably very familiar with Alligator Point and that area. It's not really the prettiest of beaches, but it's nice. It's quaint. It's very, very simple. And for the most part, it's very family friendly. It's just less touristy as somewhere like Panama City or Destin or somewhere like that. And it's fairly close. It's not a long time to get there. And, it's a nice day trip type thing to do. So that's what they were doing. They were headed down to Bald Point at Alligator Point, and they were just going to soak up some sun, some rays. And so they actually had set up their towels. They had an old boom box because, that was the thing then. They were jamming to some classical rock. Well, it didn't really say classical rock. It just said that they were jamming to some rock tunes. And they were just relaxing in their bathing suits on the beach, just chit-chatting and soaking up sun like girls do. And sadly, a little while after they had been there, they were spotted by an off-duty police officer and his wife that were on vacation. Now, this off-duty police officer, when they first walked by them, they were just walking down the beach, just walking. And him and his wife spotted the girls, and they noticed that they were there, but they ended up making a kind of wide turn around them because they didn't want to invade on their privacy or make them feel uncomfortable or whatever. So they decided that they were just going to make a wide turn around them. Well, a little while later, on their way back up the beach, they noticed that the girls had not moved. Like, they were in the same positions that they had been, and they just had this feeling like something wasn't quite right. And so as they got closer to the girls, they noticed that something was just terribly, terribly wrong. Both girls had been shot, and sadly, both girls were dead. And so they call law enforcement, and sadly, it was just a very gruesome scene. Megan and Cherish had both been shot in the head. Whenever police investigators got there on scene, they realized that both girls had been shot twice in the head. And it was kind of crazy because when they were doing the investigation, they just knew that there was going to be either a robbery or, they looked for signs of sexual assault, and the girls had not been messed with at all. Like, their bag was still there, their items were still in their bag. Megan's keys to her car were still beside them in the bag. Nothing was missing. The radio was still on, it was still playing. And, they checked for sexual assault. No sign of rape, no sign of them even being messed with. And so this was a real boggling thing to the police officers and the investigators that were working the case. They were just like, what is this? What are we investigating? And so automatically they're thinking this has to be something personal, or, that they just didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to think, because it just didn't make sense that it was a robbery or an act done, of sexual violence or something like that. There was just no signs of anything, and it baffled the police. And so they started questioning people that were in the area, anyone and everyone that they could think of. The only tip that they were able to find really and use was that there was a dark blue Plymouth Volare, a dark blue Plymouth Volare had been spotted, and that is a car. It had been spotted in the area, and it was kind of out of place, and the people that, were from the area and lived in the area, or, were vacationing there, for some reason, it stuck out to several people. And so the cops jotted that down on their notes. And like I said, sadly, they didn't have a lot to go off of. They didn't know why the girls had been murdered and what the reasoning was, because nothing made sense. And, Thomasville police were notified, as well as the ones that were in Florida where this happened. And so they were kind of working the case on, in two different states. So Thomasville police were also, the Thomasville, I want to think Sheriff's Department handled it, but they were handling the case in Thomasville. They were questioning friends, family. They even questioned the boyfriend, and again, nothing was adding up. But come to find out, they find out that, I can't remember if it was Megan or if it was Cherish, but one of them across the road from them lived a person that had a similar car. And so police are thinking that, oh man, this is great. Like, this is going to be a great break in our case. Well, they question the guy, come to find out he's not involved. He's got a strong alibi. It was just a coincidental type thing. And as the Florida law enforcement, let me try to say that one more time. As the Florida law enforcement was looking into things, they started checking into this vehicle, since it was really the only lead they had. So they started going through the motor vehicle database, and they were able to track down every single Volare, and, within a certain county range, I guess. Maybe it was throughout the state. But they were able to track down like 80-something models, and from those 86, they had to manually go in and check the color, because at that time, the color was not listed in the vehicle records. So they narrowed it down, and I want to think it came out to be like 5 different ones. And so they started going and reaching out to every single owner of these 5 vehicles, or however many it was. We're just going to say 5 because I can't really remember exactly. But they narrowed it down to a few different ones. And in that process, they found 2 that were more likely, that were closer to the area. One was an older lady that, I can't remember exactly where she lived. I don't even know if it stated it, but they went and questioned her, and she had actually been out of town, out of state, in Georgia at the time of the murders on that day, and she had a solid alibi. She had been staying with family, and so she was ruled out. Well, the other one, or one of the ones on the list of the people that owned this particular kind of car in this color, was a guy named Robert Neil Rodriguez. And Robert was like a previous cop. He was from an Air Force family, and, he just really didn't seem like a likely suspect. And so the police were really starting to just get kind of, I don't want to say like frustrated, but they were just running into dead end after dead end after dead end. And, it was starting to really, really start to look bad, because they were like, we really need to get this case solved. And they were putting everything they could into it. They were determined they were going to find justice for these 2 16-year-old girls. And so in the process of them doing all that research and looking into everything, even though Robert Rodriguez seemed like a very unlikely suspect, the police still wanted to go and question him, and he was questioned, but nothing really came of it. Now, just to give you a little bit of a backstory of who Robert is, I'm going to tell you a little bit of facts about him and what his history was. So Robert was born in 1950 in Oregon, and he was born into an Air Force family. His dad had served many, many years, and they were very familiar with that lifestyle. If you are a part of or know someone in the Air Force, you know exactly what I'm talking about, or the military. They have to move often. They're very disciplined. So he was raised up in that type of atmosphere. Well, whenever he got of age, he decided that he wanted to pursue something bigger than himself. And so he was very, very strong in his faith. He was a Mormon, and he decided that he wanted to go to Guatemala and serve as a Mormon missionary. And so that's what he did. He went to Guatemala for 2 years and was a Mormon missionary over there. And he just absolutely loved it. It was just something that was a blessing to him, and he was blessing other people. Well, in that process, he comes home to Oregon, and he decides that he wants to be a police officer because he wanted to help people. Well, he ends up going to, I'm trying to think of the name of the college that he actually went to. He went to Brigham Young University in Oregon, and he received a degree in law enforcement. I don't know if it was a criminal justice degree or how it was classified, but it just stated that it was a degree for law enforcement. And so then he was hired by the Portland Police Bureau in 1975. He actually only worked there for 2 years, though, before he decided to resign, and it was on good terms. It wasn't on bad terms. I guess he just figured it wasn't for him. I'm not sure what the details were. There's not a lot of information on it. But he did decide to resign after only 2 years. And after resigning, he decided to move to Tallahassee, Florida from Oregon. And so he moved all the way from Oregon to Tallahassee in 1978. And he became a student at FSU, and he was a part-time janitor while he was there, and he also did fill-in painting and just little odd jobs and things like that. I don't know if that was just to pay for his schooling, and I didn't ever find what he was actually going to FSU for as far as what he was studying, but he was a student at FSU, and he was also a part-time janitor there. So he was living in Tallahassee at the time of all of this going on, and police decided to go and, question him because he had a car that was similar. And so after police went and questioned him, they didn't really find anything. He said that he couldn't remember what he was doing that day, but that he had to run an errand or something. He was busy and he didn't have time. And anyway, so somehow he managed to get away from the police, okay? I don't really think it was maybe a really serious ordeal to him, or the police, for whatever reason, they just let him leave. They're like, okay, whatever, dude, just call me when you can because we need to talk. And so one of the investigators actually kept trying to get a hold of him. He couldn't reach him. So after that, Robert Rodriguez, he actually ends up going and leaving Tallahassee. We're not really sure exactly where all he went or who all he saw in the time frame from when he left Tallahassee after being questioned by police, but he ends up calling his girlfriend, and he calls her from a payphone, and he doesn't disclose his location, but he does tell her that he is the one. He tells his girlfriend, he confesses to killing the 2 girls at the beach, and at that time, it was such a wide-known case, and it was so fresh in everybody's brains that she knew exactly who he was talking about. And so once she hangs up the phone with him, I'm not really sure all the details of what all was said in that conversation, but what I do know is that later that day, she ends up calling police and telling them what he had told her. And so not long after that, Rodriguez actually telephoned the Florida Department of Law Enforcement himself, and he confessed on the phone to them. It's kind of crazy because as he is confessing to the police about the 2 murders of Megan Carr and Cherish DeSantis, he also admits to another murder that he had committed almost 10 years prior. And her name, which we're going to get into her, but before we get there, as he's telling them this stuff and they're trying to get as much information as they can, they're trying to track where he's actually calling from. And he doesn't disclose his location, and he lets law enforcement know that he is going to send letters to them explaining all the details, but that he doesn't plan to be alive by the time they get the letters and by the time they get all the details. And so they're on the phone. They're just trying to talk him into letting them find him, coming in, turning himself in, whatever it takes. And he ends up hanging up the phone. And so after he hangs up the phone, like I said, they're trying to track him. They're trying to find where he's calling from. And it ended up being a payphone. And by the time they were able to get to that location, he was nowhere to be found. While police were searching for Rodriguez, he was doing exactly what he told the police he was going to be doing. He was writing letters. I want to think that so far, or total, they actually found 11 different letters that Rodriguez had written. And, during that time of him making the call to the police to the time where, police were looking for him and trying to find where his location was and get him to turn himself in. One of the murders, like I told y'all, was a murder that was almost 10 years prior to Megan and Cherish being murdered. And that murder was a girl named Valerie Hunt. She was like a 22-year-old student at Tallahassee Community College. And I feel so bad because I did so much research trying to find a picture of her or just information about her, and I couldn't find anything. And I don't know if it's just because of the age of the case, but I hated that I couldn't find more information about her, because I would have loved to tell you guys a little bit about this poor girl that lost her life in such a vicious way, and her life was just cut so short. It's just tragic. But she was a 22-year-old student, and she had gone missing from a shopping center, kind of like a mall, and she had not been seen of, heard of, nothing. She just disappeared. And so nobody knew what had happened to this girl. And he actually told them on the phone that he was going to put in his letter to them where to find her, what the details were, and all of this information. So as they're trying to find this guy, they're also patiently waiting for these letters that he supposedly has written to come in, because they've already been put in the mail. He'd already stated that. Well, in that process, it actually was stated in the letters. I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all, because I don't want y'all to forget about Valerie. So we're going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about that. So in the letter that police actually end up getting a little bit later, he actually stated where he put her body, and they found her skeletized, decomposed remains near a sinkhole in Wakulla County, not far from Tallahassee, just south of Tallahassee. And it's just awful, and there's not a lot that was released to the public about what exactly happened to her. It is stated that in the letters he did explain to them what he did to her, but to my knowledge and the research I've done, he did not rape her, and it does not state that it just states that she was killed. So I really hate that. So if you guys find out any information about what happened, please comment below and let me know what happened to Valerie, because I never could find anything. Excuse me. So after, searching for him and, getting this insane phone call from him, they end up getting a big break. On May 16th, I saw a couple of different sites that said the 15th, a couple different ones said the 16th. So May 15th, 16th, something like that, in 92, he was actually found. Police found a parked dark blue Plymouth Volare in a parking lot in New Mexico, which was his car. They spotted after realizing that it was indeed his car, this part's kind of, I have mixed feelings about it, and I'm going to tell you guys why. After they find the car, they go up to the car, and they actually find him sitting in the driver's seat, and he is deceased. They found him dead inside the car where he had committed suicide. He actually had concocted a mixture of a shot of scotch and cyanide, and he swallowed it, he ingested it, and after taking the lethal dose, he succumbed to death. And he did leave a note beside him saying that how he had killed himself, that he had ingested cyanide, and that he knew that it would be fatal for anybody that tried to resuscitate him. And so he stated that he made very clear, he said, do not try to resuscitate me because it could be fatal to whoever, does mouth to mouth or tries to resuscitate me. And during that, he also stated in the note that he was taking his life to give the victims' families peace of mind and to avoid having to take the victims' families to trial, because I guess he knew how gruesome that would be for the families. And he also stated that he didn't want to go to prison. And so that was his 3 reasons for pretty much taking his own life. And, he wanted to avoid all of that, which, like I said, it's one of those cases where there's just so many unanswered questions, like why? And in the letters, they started showing up not long after he was found dead or after his suicide. They started showing up everywhere. And out of all the letters that he wrote so many. Like, we know of 11 for sure, but in those 11 letters, he wrote a letter to Megan Carr's family. He wrote a letter to Cherish DeSantis family. He wrote a letter to an unnamed ex-girlfriend. He wrote one to... He actually wrote a 6-page letter to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement detailing each murder and how it went down and where to find Valerie Hunt's body. And, he also ended up writing a letter to a reporter with the Arizona Daily Sun. It was a paper news outlet. And he explained to them some things. He also wrote a letter to his church that he was very involved in and several of his friends. I wanted to share with you guys, like, some of the details from those letters because it's just kind of mind-boggling. I mean, it's intense. But in one of the letters to the victim's family, I'm not sure if this was actually to Megan's family or to Cherish's family, but this is what he stated in one of the letters to their families. And he said, on March 27th, I went to Alligator Point in search of someone to beat and rape. A long-time mental obsession that I've had no explanation for nor understanding of. While there, I encountered Megan and Cherish sunning themselves. They did nothing to provoke me. I claim no excuse for my actions. And he said that he chose them because they were young, attractive, and very isolated in where they were. Another thing that he stated in the letter to them was that, and this is tragic, but at the same time, I guess in his mind, he thought that this would give the family some closure and it would help ease their pain. He did state in the letters to the family that it was only a few seconds between each shot that he killed the girls. So I guess in his mind, he was trying to let them know that they didn't suffer as long as that they could have, as if that makes it better. I don't really know. This guy had some issues, y'all, like some major issues. Just, can you imagine, having your child, something like that happen, and then receiving a letter from their killer saying, I'm so sorry for what I did. It's not your child's fault. I just couldn't help myself. I decided that I just couldn't control myself, so I shot him. But don't worry, I did it really fast. So, yeah, there's that. Like, who does that? Wow. Just wow. Wow. Anyways, and so in another letter that he wrote to the Arizona Daily Sun, which he had attentioned to a certain reporter, I don't know the details of why or how he knew this guy or whatever, but he ended up having this particular one detailed to this certain reporter at the Arizona Daily Sun. And this is what was said, one of the quotes out of the letter that he sent to him. And he said, whether or not they know it, I am wanted for 3 murders by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. I don't think they could prove any of the 3, but I can't live with myself if I'm going to act like this. And then later in the letter, he actually wrote something about the lead investigator of the case. The guy's name was McGarvey, and he said, Rodriguez wrote it later in the letter. He said, and this was in reference to McGarvey, he said, received full details on all 3 slayings from me in the mail. Tell him that he can take the weekend off. Like, wow. I just, like I said, I just have no words for this dude. He is just an absolute whatever. But, you know, he was kind of like making a joke of this, you know, whole thing. He's like, tell the guy to take the weekend off. I've got letters going out. He'll find out soon enough what happened, you know, as if it's just such a cut and dry thing. And he also did put his reason in his own mind for killing himself, or not for killing himself, but for murdering, becoming a freaking psychopath and shooting and killing innocent young girls that did nothing to provoke him. He wrote in the letter that he had experienced uncontrollable urges to kill. He wrote that he had this, you know, sick, twisted thought process about wanting to rape and beat women, especially young, attractive girls. And just, wow. I mean, it's just absolutely awful. 2 families, well, actually 3 families. You know, you have Valerie Hunt that there's nothing like documented hardly at all about her other than she was just this missing girl that at 22 years old went shopping and never was found again. Her body is found in a sinkhole. I mean, it's just so sad. And then you have these 2 sweet girls that have their whole life ahead of them. I mean, Cherish and Megan just, they were going places in life. From everything that I have read, researched, and listened to, they both had really bright futures. And just to hear that some guy just pointlessly, no purpose, just decided to take them out just because he had an urge to kill, like, just, it's just heartbreaking that somebody can have such little empathy or such little importance to human life. I mean, it's just awful. But sadly, you know, like I said, this is a very tragic case, and it hits home because it happened right down the road. It's just awful. But I wanted to bring you guys this case because several people had mentioned it to me, and it was pretty highly requested, and it was in Thomasville, so I definitely wanted to cover it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video as much as you can, considering the details and the circumstances. And like I said, if you guys find more information out about Valerie, please send it my way, because I would love to read or learn more about her, because sadly I just couldn't find much. But I hope you guys have a great day, and please feel free to share the video. I have created a true crime page as well, where I'm going to be posting not just the videos that I make of these cases, as well as I'm also going to be doing the actual research that I've done from pictures, news articles, things like that for each of the cases that I cover. So you should be able to find that on the page. And I really hope to be able to do a couple of these videos a week. Hopefully I can do that. You know, there's life and stuff that gets kind of crazy, and COVID. I'm just going to blame everything on COVID at this point. But y'all have a fantastic day. Stay safe out there. Hug your babies and make sure you tell your family you love them. Don't leave on bad terms, because none of us are promised tomorrow. But I hope y'all have a fantastic rest of the day and a wonderful holiday tomorrow. God bless y'all. Be safe.